Here's my first long-form video covering movie palaces and theaters of the 1920s. As many of you probably know, the trend of building movie palaces produced some of the most ambitiously designed movie theaters ever. The biggest ones had a seating capacity that's really hard for people today to even imagine for watching a movie, with some having as many as a few thousand seats. And these movie palaces only had one screen. This grand spectacle was part of a broader push for making the movie-watching experience ever bigger in scale. Even smaller theaters sometimes were far more interesting than the multiplexes of today, and you'll see plenty of both the big palaces and the smaller theaters in this video. I'm gonna take you on a grand tour of these awesome theaters, some of which were torn down long ago, though some are still with us today in some way. So without further ado, let's get into it. The Roxy Theater, world's largest, is opened in New York. Exhibitors Herald, March 19, 1927. Early in November 1925, S.L. Rothafel, better known as Roxy, inaugurated the demolition ceremonies of the old car barns at 50th Street and 7th Avenue, New York City, for the site of the new Roxy Theater. Walter W. Allschlager, Chicago architect, had prepared the plans for what was to become the world's largest motion picture palace. Built of Bedford stone, terracotta, and pressed brick, the Roxy occupies a plot which fronts 290 feet on north side of West 50th Street and 190 feet on south side of West 51st Street, and has an irregular depth of approximately 200 feet. The theater covers an area of 52,250 square feet, rising to a height of 115 feet, making it the largest in the world. There is a seating capacity of over 6,214 seats, some of which on the mezzanine floor are divan seats. Backstage is a 6-story building used for private projection rooms, dressing rooms, club rooms, tailor shop, in fact, every convenience for what is promised as a city within itself. 2 high-speed elevators with combined capacity of 80 people carry patrons to the balcony, and a marquee along the length of the building takes care of patrons in inclement weather. A radio broadcasting studio contains the last word in modern equipment, and is one of the features of the Roxy Theater. Here, Roxy with his gang will broadcast to his friends throughout the country on a scale never before attempted. The size of the theater favors an elaborate enframement of the picture program. Productions supported by anywhere around 150 people on the stage at one time and 100 additional voices concealed in the choir chambers may be presented to the mammoth audience. The main floor has a seating capacity of 2,982 seats, the mezzanine 1,054, and the balcony 2,178 seats, total 6,214. Probably the first interesting deviation from ordinary theater design is the method of staircases and approaches to the 3 groups of seats. The patrons to the main floor of the auditorium, having passed through the entrance, will travel the long axis of the elliptical foyer to the auditorium. Patrons to the mezzanine floor will travel 1/2 the length of the long axis, and then up a separate and private marble staircase 16 feet wide to the mezzanine floor. Patrons for the balcony, immediately upon entering the large foyer, will turn to the left and travel by means of a 16-foot wide winding marble staircase to the tunnel floor. Patrons to the balcony will at all times have a vista, through the colonnades to the entire foyer, and likewise will be visible, as they are en route up the stairway, to all persons on the main floor of the foyer. For those who desire to reach the balcony via elevator, 2 large elevators are provided. A digest of the line of travel shows that an important problem, the mastery and control of large crowds by the operators, has been simplified and made possible by dividing each set as soon as possible and sending them on their respective and separate journeys, each in a definite direction of the shortest possible length. To enframe the spectacle of an audience over 6,000 has in itself presented a possibility unfolding architectural ideals never before made possible. Every architectural form dictated by the practical conditions of the structure have been made useful to the producer to put in force any fanciful idea of stagecraft. An innovation in organ building has been designed in placing the organ chambers beneath the stage. Vibration affecting patrons of balcony seats, where organ lofts are elevated on either side of stage opening, has been eliminated, and that space heretofore so allotted has been used for the creation of vistas and architectural embellishments, such as a pair of huge richly carved winding stairs starting at the ground floor on either side of the proscenium, which twist upward to odd pulpit-like landings until they reach the ceiling. The ancient Greek idea of putting the chorus out into the audience may be actually put into use, and likewise choir presentations and processions may be produced as effectively as in the largest European cathedral. Taking into account that the arrangement of a great amount of color lighting, architecturally concealed, working balconies for spotlighting, it becomes evident that the audience is seated in a workable stage setting itself. Architectural forms, rather than paint, are used to decorate the auditorium, in order that the crowds and vistas shall enhance the spectacle, and that the concealed four-color lighting, with its power to control and change the entire color scheme of the house, together with the music of the chorus, the concealed choir, the organ, and the orchestra, shall form any atmosphere desired in working stagecraft on the stage, in front of a lowered curtain or both. The orchestra pit may be lowered by electrical control to a distance of 15 feet below stage level, from which lower position direct access is available to club rooms, lounge room, lockers, smoking room, and library of musicians. This platform may be raised to a total height of 3 feet above stage level if desired. A separate elevator within the orchestra pit, independent of the elevator of the orchestra platform, will take care of the piano and the lectern, enabling it to be elevated if desired independently. In front of the orchestra pit, and as an extension thereof, is located the fourth electric elevating platform, upon which are located 3 organ consoles, which again may be operated independently of the orchestra platform and of the lectern platform. The stage presents many interesting appointments. Its maximum depth at the center line is 55 feet. Approximately the rear half of the stage is elevated by electric elevators 60 feet wide, 20 feet deep, enabling 75 people to be located thereon below stage, and raised into position at stage level or above the stage in terrace fashion, and enabling them to be as quickly removed. A scenic production of great splendor may also be built thereon in almost prolific fashion. In its architecture, both the interior and exterior, the Roxy Theater has been designed in the early Plateresque period, which prevailed in the early Renaissance in Spain, with a touch of the Italian. With a view to making the new Roxy a work of art as well as a practical theater, 8 sculptors and 300 skilled mechanics worked for 5 months on the art plaster decorations of New York's newest playhouse. Pietro Chavara, well-known sculptor, was in charge of the designing. More than 1,000 designs were modeled. 5 men worked day and night for a month over the proscenium arch on a panel which is 72 feet long, with human figures 12 feet high. And the work on the dome of the grand foyer consumed an equal period of time. For the art plaster work, 1,100 tons of plaster and lime were used. Included in the materials for this job were 30,000 yards of metal lathe, 40,000 yards of burlap for reinforcing the plaster, imported specially from Dundee, Scotland, 250 tons of steel fabrication, 500,000 feet of galvanized tie wire, 700,000 feet of channel iron to hold the plaster in place, 200,000 feet 1.5-inch angle iron, and 70 tons of modeling clay. The unique plan of putting the stage in one corner of the building has necessitated an entirely new method of attack, and the stage mechanism designed by art director Clark Robinson is the culmination of 4 years' work and experimentation with Roxy. The stage is triangular rather than square, a form which lends itself peculiarly to new developments in stagecraft. Simply by rounding off the rear corner, a perfect sky cyclorama has been effected, and by flying this cyclorama with the aid of a separate steel beam construction overhead and electric motors, the unusual depth of 60 feet in the center of the stage was obtained, a distance equaled only by the Metropolitan Stage and the Manhattan Opera House, now obsolete. This makes possible a new scheme of rear projection by which animated backdrops are obtained. A system of elevators arranged to produce any desired combination of levels with the use of platforms controls the stage floor, which may be sunk to the basement or cellar if desired. The proscenium opening is 80 feet, but with the use of stage draperies, the actual working dimensions are cut down to 60 feet wide by 32 feet high, the depth from the curtain line to the cyclorama in the center being 44 feet. The lighting equipment is comprised of 4 color units, providing an elasticity of color play. A large stage switchboard having over 1,000 switching levers has been installed. 3 separate organs have been installed in the Roxy, one in the auditorium and another in the grand foyer. Particular attention has been given to the selection of the uniform staff, 125 in number, which, placed under 2 drill masters, both ex-sergeants of the Marines long before the theater opened, have been trained on a military basis. The careful selection of the personnel covered a period of many months, the older men comprising college graduates who have either been to Plattsburgh or who have been drilled in the ROTC of their universities, and the younger boys being part-time students in first-year colleges throughout the city. Their training period called for a complete physical training, emergency and fire drills, and a thorough schooling in the courtesy to the patron ideal characteristic of Roxy theaters. Club rooms equipped with recreation facilities, library for those continuing their studies, gymnasium and handball courts and showers are provided for the staff when off duty, and various relays from 15 to 30 minutes are arranged for recreation. An honor and demerit system is used in order to ensure promotion to those who earn it, and every effort is made to enlist cooperation from the employees both on and off duty. The Roxy is equipped with projectors and equipment, including simplex projectors, the Vitaphone, and the new invention, the Spore Natural Vision, which will have its world showing at this theater. Hall & Connolly high-intensity lamps have been installed on the projectors and on the Brenkert effect machines and spot lamps. Hoffman & Soon's Perfection rheostats are included in the equipment. Seats in the Roxy were furnished by Haywood Wakefield. A new device whereby the projectionist can change at will the size or shape of the image flashed on the screen has been perfected for use in the Roxy Theater. And an innovation in mechanical effects is the projection machine in the rear of the stage, where pictures are shown on a special screen made by the Royal Projection Screen Company, which gives a stereoscopic effect. The projection room, presided over by Arthur Smith, expert projectionist, contains every device known to the perfection of picture presentation, even to the extent of providing a restroom and shower bath for the men during relief hours. The Roxy screen is the exact size of the picture, and instead of the ordinary black masking, a delicate gauze behind which there is a cyclorama of silver cloth with different color lamps playing on it, gives a soft diffused light to the picture. Dr. Nixon of the Bosch & Lohm Optical Company devised the optical system to meet the manifold needs. Among the many innovations is a new and revolutionary method of house lighting. By means of appliances invented by Mr. S.L. Rothafel, Roxy, it is possible to see distinctly while the picture is being projected. Every member of the audience can read his program without straining the eyes during the picture. Supplementing the new lighting system, Roxy has devised a new method of projection, which will make the picture even clearer than it would be in the customary dark auditorium. This is only one of the many features which the Roxy Theater offers for the comfort of its patrons. Patents are pending in Washington for both of the Roxy inventions. A musical library, estimated as the largest theater collection, topping even Eastman's at Rochester, which until now has held the record, has been installed at the Roxy Theater. It contains 10,000 numbers of 50,000 orchestrations, the nucleus being provided by Victor Herbert's library, which Roxy recently purchased from the late composer's daughter, Ella. 75 specially constructed asbestos-lined cabinets with automatic locks already line the walls of the library, which is guarded by 3 librarians, with Al Gaber in charge. Among other innovations which have been installed to make for greater safety is a complete hospital. The Roxy Theater is the first in the world to contain a modern operating room. It will be equipped with all appliances necessary for the care of minor injuries of all sorts, and for first aid to fractures. While the Roxy Theater is today the largest of its kind that mankind has anywhere conceived, its magnitude is made possible only by several facts, among which may be enumerated the increasing desire of picture patrons to see and hear the best in this art, the ever-increasing ability of the exhibitor to put on and improve his show, the ever-increasing betterment in the production of films, the ever-increasing recognition of bankers and investors of the stability of motion picture theater securities, and the ever-increasing ambition of picture theater owners to improve the art and science of the building of theaters over those already existing. The Roxy Hospital, Exhibitors Herald World, May 11th, 1929. The problem of what to do with a baby when his parents want to go to the motion picture show has been settled at the Roxy Theater in New York. There is no check room for the youngsters, but when several days ago the management was confronted with 2 young people who wanted to park the child while they were seeing the show, the problem was quickly solved. The theater hospital had been installed by S.L. Rothafel, the famous Roxy, for emergencies, and by stretching a point, it was decided that this family of 3 was providing a real emergency. And so the child was left in the care of the registered nurses, and was soon happily playing with the sterilizer and the operating table, while Mother and Dad went in to see the show. It is a regulation hospital, this place on the 4th floor of the Roxy. It has separate wards, one for men and one for women, and private rooms as well. Its equipment is such that it can stand up with any hospital, even the professional kind. As a matter of fact, it has a Board of Health license, and all the other sundry permits which make a hospital out of an infirmary. The boast of its 2 registered nurses is that if an epidemic should break out in New York, the Roxy Hospital would be drafted to take care of cases brought in. Figures for the hospital during the 2 years just completed reveal the fact that more than 14,000 cases were taken care of. Considering that this feature of Roxy's service is purely institutional, and that unlike other hospitals, its activity is limited to patrons of the theater and employees, the total figure is little less than astonishing. There are a few isolated instances where emergency cases have been brought to the hospital from the street. Automobile accidents were responsible for 2. Slippery streets accounted for about a dozen, and the summer's heat brought 8 patients into the wards of the hospital. As to the rest, they were all derived from the ranks of those employed and those who visited the theater. Dancers have treasuresome but troublesome ankles, and they get out of order more often than the innocent bystander thinks. Workers backstage have a knack for dodging injury, but splinters have a way of getting in under the most careful of skins and starting an infection on its way. Projectionists seem unable to escape lacerations and burns, and the way from the projection booth to the hospital is more or less a beaten path. Of the total figure, about 11,000 have been cases among the theater's personnel. Cases running the gamut from splinters to dislocated shoulders were attended to in the regular course of hospital routine. At least 20 workers required continual treatment over a period of time, sometimes months long. This hospital, as is the case with most hospitals, has its regulars as well as its emergency cases. There is a regular patron of the Roxy Theater who is just as regular as a patient of its hospital. His arrival at the theater sets the machinery in motion. He weighs about 200 pounds and is a war veteran suffering from shell shock. The slightest amount of emotion aroused in him causes an epileptic seizure. When he comes to the Roxy, the first thing he does is let the office know where he is sitting, usually in back of the orchestra. An usher is then detailed to watch him, and at the first sign of something wrong, this patron is carried to the hospital. There are stretchers placed all over the house, and the ushers who are instructed in almost everything else are also instructed in the most effective methods of stretcher bearing. Once in the hospital, our friend is put into the care of one of the registered nurses. After an hour or two, he comes to again, puts on his hat, and says thank you. Then, wistfully, he says something about a fellow having to go to the movies even if he is shell-shocked, and leaves. It is significant that with more than 14,000 administerings of treatment, calls for doctors had to be made only 32 times. In all other cases, the two registered nurses, constantly in charge of the Roxy Hospital, achieved the necessary results. Their special training for this specific work has rendered them fully capable of coping with the varied situations they encounter. The operating room of the hospital fairly bristles with efficient-looking instruments. There is an operating table and full operating equipment, so that if the necessity should arise, a major operation could be performed right on the premises. An umbrella-like lamp over the table gives illumination equal to clear daylight. It is lined with small panels of glass reflecting the light so that no shadows are cast upon the object illuminated. It is one of the first brought to this country from Europe. In almost constant use for nose and throat treatment and for the soothing of singers who have irritated vocal cords is the Sorensen unit. It can be adapted to almost any type of nasal and throat work, from innocent spraying to surgical operations. The mere turn of a dial changes the character of the unit. And of course, there are sterilizers for instruments and utensils, drums for clean cotton and gauze, and all the other accoutrements of modern medical establishment. All equipment is arranged so that hands need never be used in their operation. By means of a foot pedal contraption, they can be moved, opened, and closed. Even water is drawn by means of the foot. The most interesting part of the room is the steel instrument and medicine closet. All the surgical instruments and appurtenances are laid out in the order of their possible use. The entering surgeon needs do nothing but put on his coat, his mask, and his gloves. Everything is in readiness for any conceivable operation. Recognition came to this hospital several months ago from the National Organization for Public Health Nursing in Commerce and Industry. The Roxy Hospital was called the only institution of its kind, and was selected as a representative organization containing complete hospital and nursing equipment. Picture record of building progress of Fox Theater in Detroit. Motion Picture News, November 4th, 1927. Highlights in the building progress of the magnificent theater which the Fox Company is erecting in Detroit. This picture shows the early stages of excavation work on the site at Woodward Avenue, between Columbia and Montcalm Streets, taken last December. Here is a view of the building taken September 14th with the auditorium, which will be devoted to motion picture entertainment outlined in the steel skeleton of the lower portion of this huge theater and office building. The foundation work of the Fox Theater. The picture was taken last June. The magnificent Fox is revealed to Detroit. The Exhibitors Herald and Moving Picture World, September 29, 1928. Detroit's newest theater, the Fox, opened its doors last Friday evening to a capacity crowd of more than 5,000 invited guests. Seating slightly more than 5,000 persons, the Fox is the largest theater in Detroit and the nation's second largest. The architects, C. Howard Crane and his associates, Elmer George Cuyler and Ben Dorr, designed the building after Hindu styles of architecture. Only one other house resembles it, the Fox Theater in St. Louis. William Fox, who was in the city several days supervising the arranging of furnishings, and Mrs. Fox were among the notables from out of town at the formal opening. Others included the entire list of Fox officials from the East Coast. Early in the evening, long before 8:30 p.m., the hour set for the opening, a large crowd commenced milling around the three box offices, and before the inaugural performance was underway, the police were kept busy clearing a passageway for the Woodward Avenue foot traffic. Once inside, the first sight that greeted the guests was the spacious lobby, 6 stories high and a half-block long, containing what is said to be the largest one-piece rug in the world. Also in the lobby is an organ completely separate from the organ in the auditorium. This is used to entertain those waiting for seats. The opening was a gay affair in every respect. The program, carefully rehearsed for a week in advance, was run off without any of the untoward happenings that so often mar an opening presentation. There were no missing drapes or fixtures. The stage curtains did not stick, and the film did not break. The generals and admirals of the ushers bowed extra low and swept through the aisles and foyers with extra military precision. The inaugural was opened with the playing of the Star-Spangled Banner by the Fox Orchestra of some 60 pieces. The conductor, Adolf Kornspan, then led his musicians through the thunderous notes of Richard Wagner's Rienzi. Next came Waltz of the Blue Danube Blues, listed on the program as a symphonic jazz arrangement of the classic. Fittingly enough, there was a stage production, The Evolution of Transportation. This was a pageant in 8 scenes, depicting the progress of Detroit from Indian days to the present time. It entailed the use of an old Indian drag, a covered wagon, a high-wheeled bicycle, a passenger train, and finally a modern motor car. The Fox Ballet of 32 dancing girls called Tillerettes and an ensemble of 50 voices took part in these proceedings. Another stage production preceded the feature film, Street Angel. It was entitled Neapolitan Festival, and the entire stage ensemble united in this colorful prologue for the Fox film starring Charles Farrell and Janet Gaynor. Among the shorter subjects were some movie-tone films, chief among them a presentation of George Bernard Shaw. The only hitch in the opening performance came in the talking films, it might be said. The management had arranged for talking pictures to be made of Mayor John C. Lodge, it being decided that for Mayor Lodge to say a few words via the talking pictures rather than in the flesh would be a distinct novelty. Mayor Lodge failed to register well in the films, however, and the idea was scrapped. The entire ceremonies were broadcast by local radio station. One of the country's finest and a synchronized house. The Exhibitors Herald and Moving Picture World, September 1st, 1928. Tired of the classical styles, in the new Fox Theater in Detroit, one of the most pretentious theaters ever built, yet subdued and artistic, the crane door genius has achieved something distinctly magnificent. Designed in the colorful and elaborate art of the ancient temples of old India, thoroughly modernized, Detroit's largest theater, seating 5,047, will be a marvel of engineering, architecture, and theatrical skill. Rich in pastel colorings, even the ticket lobby in the Detroit Fox will give some hint of the air of culture and comfort, old world greatness with new world luxury that will characterize the theater, second only to the Roxy in New York for size, and second to none in beauty. The Mammoth Lobby, lovely in blazing pastel colors, soars 6 stories high and is half the block long. Exotic bands of Hindu and Indian ornaments circle the lower third of the huge oxblood red marble columns that span the grand lobby on both sides, crowned with gigantic jeweled figured capitals in intricate design. The frieze above the columns is broken up by niches and shrines containing symbolic figures of various of the gods of Asia, stretching majestically the length of the grand lobby. Elaborate mirrors between the columns quadruple the vast sea of space so filled with richness and glowing color. Along the grand promenade of the main auditorium, the walls are richly painted like brocaded silks, and occasional niches set in the paneling reveal huge and intricately designed jeweled Hindu incense burners, radiating a soft glow of light from their interior. Carved old ivory paneling and soffit effects predominate. Richness of beauty and outline rather than abstract beauty of form, contrasting strongly with Grecian architecture, identify this Oriental adaptation, never before, it is said, used in theater construction. A great deal of symbolism pervades the whole atmosphere. Temple buildings of old India were centers for all the learning of the ages. The great Buddhist monastery of Yolanda accommodated 10,000 priests, votaries of the beauty of pure learning. The building of temples was regarded as a social virtue, leading to a happy future state. With the passing of Buddhism, monastic life ceased, and the temples became shrines and shelters for pilgrims. All of this rich background of meaning has its influence on the conception of this architectural departure, and on the uses to which the theater will aim, culturally and educationally. Arabian Nights are brought directly to Detroit. Fantasy is everywhere. One wanders in a dreamland full of the richness one might have hoped to find at the end and along the way of riding 10,000 miles on a magic carpet. Detroit claims to have the distinction of being the first city in the world to have this unusual and distinctive architectural development, so particularly appropriate for a theater. There are elaborate rooms for smoking, lounging, rest and comfort, and powder and puffing off the grand foyer, downstairs below the main auditorium, and at 2 of the balcony levels. But they are nothing in the lives of the awe-inspired guests as they stroll past the richly decorated arabesqued walls of the promenades, and gaze up at the richly molded and ornamented cornices and painted ceilings supported by these arabesques. Restrooms, however, have every luxury of the richest private mansions, and are perfect in every appointment. Grays, blues, and golds predominate in the color treatment for ladies' lounges. French patterns prevail. Fireplaces heighten a sense of intimacy and friendliness. Patterned after Spanish styles, large square rooms with stucco walls, wainscot of turquoise blue handmade tile, and Spanish wood-beamed ceiling are furnished with large, comfortable leather chairs, lounges, tables, and smoking equipment for men. Window openings with heavy shutters give the effect of big living rooms. Through the open arches from the grand foyer and promenade, numerous aisles stretch for almost a city block past endless rows of super comfortable velour-backed chairs. The floor is ramped for easy walking down the incline, and the aisles at the floor are lighted by soft glowing lights from behind ornamental grills in the chair ends of aisle seats. Fresh air is bound to be abundantly supplied, for under every seat is the mushroom type of ventilator, connected with the 600-ton refrigerating and heating plant. Seats have been set to give at least 2 inches more legroom, and allow incoming guests to pass in front of those seated without unnecessary inconvenience. An overall design in brocaded silks and other rich fabrics is intricately painted on the walls of the auditorium above and between the arches. And far above the columns, arches, and walls is the cornice, superbly done in ornamental plaster, and jewels from 1 to 4 inches in diameter, set in clusters and with unique jewel-eyed masks grinning out. Back of the cornice are concealed lights, which change with the theater program and the music moods, casting dull, vari-colored softness over the huge canopied ceiling. Like the richest Indian fabrics, draped circularly and Arabian tent-like from the center to the sides and richly jeweled throughout, is the main canopied dome of the auditorium. Tassels, fringes, and filigree work, all of supersize as well as super beauty, hang from the fabric ceiling, and apparently supporting this canopy are gigantic spears, extremely ornamental in character. Ornamental Hindu poles in the Burmese style, more elaborate and artistic than the North American Indian totem poles, stand back of the arches and columns, and between the Hindu poles are rich mirrors with elaborate frames and ornamental plaster, and decorated in warm colors and gold. Side walls apparently run behind a huge shell-like proscenium arch, 90 feet wide and 60 feet high, around which opening is a decorative canopy resting against 2 huge Burmese shrine-like pylons. Oriental beauty, combined with ultra-modern comfort and culture, will make this new Detroit Fox unique in the annals of theater architecture. Modern America inherits the beauty of its own antiquity. The Exhibitor's Herald World, January 19th, 1929. We went some distance from the location of the Fischer Theater to get our ideas for its design, but we stayed in America at any rate. The Fischer is a modern monument to one of the first great cultures to grow up on this continent, that of the Maya in Central America. So this new Detroit Motion Picture Theater belongs to the Western world to an extent that few of its present institutions do. It is difficult to begin describing this theater, not because of its immensity, but because of its ravishing beauty. Perhaps it is not entirely fitting that I should be the one to say that. As a matter of fact, I am not necessarily expressing my own opinion, but the opinion of others. Artists from New York and Chicago and elsewhere have told me what they think. And from the 15th of November, when the theater was opened, to December 30th, about 30,000 people were turned away. The pictures accompanying this description present the beauty of this new house built by the Fischer brothers, though they fall far short of imparting its true splendor. We obtained the effect of the stone used by the Maya by using construction blocks and sandblasting them. There are something like 400 Mayan carvings reproduced on these stones in various parts of the theater, and each was made by making a mold, casting the block, and sandblasting it. Everything decorative in the house is Mayan, the result of painstaking research work on our part and of the assistance of archaeologists. The theater is housed in the huge Fischer building at Grand Boulevard and 2nd, in a new business section of Detroit. In the main lounge on the basement level, we have built a fountain dominated by the figure of a Mayan god. The pool is laid with variegated tile, and in it swim scores of goldfish. The fountain seems to set in a native Mayan garden, for around it are plants brought from Guatemala, earliest scene of Mayan civilization. These plants have to be bathed in violet rays each day so as to give them the effect of intense sunlight. Similarly are bathed 6 macaws, Central American birds frequently mentioned in Mayan lore. These birds are kept on steel perches, to which they are chained. The perches and chains have to be of heavy steel, for they have powerful beaks and spend most of their time chewing their fetters. All carpets were specially woven from Mayan designs. Bordering the proscenium arch are panels which show the hieroglyphic symbols for the 18 Maya months. Over the proscenium arch are sculptures in the mask panel motif, while on each side of the proscenium are 2 massive figures copied from monuments in Quirigua, city in Guatemala, where are still to be found relics of the Mayan culture which began its rise about 3,000 years ago. A mural painting running around the fourth cove of the auditorium ceiling is based on an original found in the Temple of the Jaguars at Chichen Itza in Yucatan, sanctified site of the chief Mayan god. This painting of the battle, though done by an American race flourishing 3,000 years ago, is intensely spiritual in manner. On entering the main lobby or foyer, one can't help noting two seated figures at the top of the grand stairway. They represent Xochipilli, the gods of feasting and flowers. In the mezzanine are serpent columns done from columns recently excavated from the Maya site of Chichen Itza. The auditorium, which seats 2,750 on 3 floors, main, mezzanine, and balcony, is in itself a mammoth Mayan temple. The ceiling is broken up into 4 large coves, each concealing the sources of red, green, blue, and amber lights, operated on a major automatic motor-driven system. These coves are broad of curve, so as not to interfere with perfect acoustics. Above the proscenium arch, there are more such coves, arranged in a series of step-offs. Acoustic plaster was used wherever necessary to ensure excellent acoustics. The seats are set 36 inches from back to back, and patrons may pass between rows without forcing those seated to get up. All the seats were specially made with metalwork and upholstering in Mayan design by Haywood Wakefield. They have spring backs. Equipment, of course, is of the most modern types, and facilities cover every branch of theatrical operation. It might be well to mention that the stage has $75,000 worth of elevators of all sizes, so that any part or all of the platform can be raised to any height desired. In conjunction with the dressing rooms are both tub and shower baths. Publix opens atmospheric-type theater in Tampa. Exhibitors Herald, January 22, 1927. Theater construction in the South, which gained considerable momentum this year, continues at a rapid pace. Publix Theaters and Consolidated Amusements Incorporated have added a brilliant edifice to motion picture palaces below the Mason and Dixon line with the recent opening in Tampa, Florida of the new Tampa Theater, one of the popular atmospheric-type motion picture houses featuring brilliance of color and an auditorium set under an open sky effect. The Tampa Theater is conceived as a Spanish patio. The design is of the Hispano-Italian style, which came into vogue during the reign of Ferdinand and Isabel, who invited Italian architects to participate in some of the architectural wonders built during this period. Thus, the effects of the Italian Renaissance were introduced into Spain with commendable results. Like a number of other theaters being operated by the Publix Theaters Corporation throughout the country, the Tampa is incorporated in an office building. The structure is 10 stories in height. Constructed of steel, concrete, ornamental brick, and stone and stucco, the building is regarded as one of the most substantial in downtown Tampa. The architecture follows the Italian Renaissance period. Ornate stonework on the exterior has created the most attractive office building in the city. Tile and travertine have been employed extensively to the full height of the structure. The first note of the Spanish motif is gained in the unique construction of the box office, which is modeled of quaintly designed wrought iron. From this point to the entrance to the main auditorium, the theater gains in architectural grandeur until it approaches the splendor of an old Spanish castle. And the genius of John Eberson, architect, can be realized fully through his work on the project. The coloring of the various architectural details, properly blended and contrasted, the charming richness of tints softened by antiquity, is a stupendous undertaking in itself. But this has been ably accomplished by an organization especially trained and experienced in this character of decoration. The Tampa Theater is a splendid example of the delightful Mediterranean type so appropriate climatically and historically in Florida. All of the best in art and architecture from the various countries bordering on this sea of famed blue are combined in a harmonious ensemble. As is logical in Florida, the Spanish type predominates, which in itself is enriched by the influence of her erstwhile conquerors, the Moors. This is noted especially in the tile work, ancient grille work, lighting fixtures, and an occasionally oriental bizarreness of coloring. Throughout the beautiful entrance lobbies, the great patio lobby, foyers, mezzanine passages, lounge, and restrooms are furnished with splendid examples of appropriate furniture in wrought iron, wood and old leather, Spanish and Italian pottery, terracotta jars, old wrought iron and Venetian lantern-top torturers, old brass and copper jugs, reproductions of old paintings, mirrors, banners, drapes, and hangings richly embroidered, copies of the priceless Cluny weavings of old France. Some of the furnishings are genuine antique. The principal entrance on Franklin Street suggests a Venetian palace. While the side details is of Spanish origin, the ceiling is decidedly Italian. Wrought iron chandeliers with multicolored lights are suspended from a ceiling done in tints that have for ages been most popular throughout centers of Italy. The floor is of a unique design in tile. From the luxurious lobby, one enters into a patio that for beauty rivals those of the most prosperous and cultured old patrons of Spain. Walls, softly tinted in cream and old silver, are hung with heraldic cartouches, shields, brilliant banners, copies of rare tapestries, and wrought iron pieces. An open-air effect is obtained through the coloring of the ceiling to represent the sky. Twinkling stars add to the illusion. Especially noticeable is grotesque gargoyle treatment of the brackets extending over the patio, and the perfect representation of pecky cypress in the plasterwork. The tile flooring is laid in attractive designs that show the Moorish influence. Lighting fixtures in the form of stars lend an amber tint to the richly ornamented room. Beautiful Spanish furniture, reproductions of antiques, are placed advantageously throughout the patio. A notable piece is a Spanish vargueno, a genuine antique of the 14th century. Rising at each side of the patio are marble stairways which lead to the mezzanine lobby. This main upper lobby also is rich in art from the Mediterranean countries. A smoking room, which shows a bit of the Moorish influence in its tile walls, and a splendidly appointed women's restroom occupy important space on the mezzanine. Two artistic drinking fountains are placed in the lobby. Full benefit of the atmospheric theater effect is gained from the main lobby. The audience enjoys the illusion of an outdoor atmosphere surrounded by picturesque facades of old-world palaces, colonnades of graceful arches, romantic balconies, the tower of ancient castles, and the mystical beauty of an old Spanish cathedral window. Over all is the deep blue of the Mediterranean sky, with an occasional twinkle of a far-off star, and the restful tranquility of fleecy clouds slowly drifting by. Beautiful white pigeons and gaily colored parrots are perched here and there, and a proud peacock surveys the audience from a high balcony. The Arcada, St. Charles, Illinois, a distinctive playhouse. Exhibitor's Herald, October 2nd, 1926. What unquestionably ranks as one of the finest theaters in the 1,000-seat class was opened Labor Day in St. Charles, Illinois. The Arcada Theater, as it is known, is a house designed and built with a definite plan and purpose. It fulfills its mission admirably, setting a splendid example, and revealing anew a thought frequently expressed in these columns, namely, that in the smaller town and rural communities lies vast opportunities for the development and growth of the motion picture theater. The Arcada was built by Lester Norris, St. Charles millionaire, from plans prepared by architect Elmer F. Behrens of Chicago. It was Mr. Norris's idea to give to the city a playhouse of which it could be justly proud, a theater that would offer every element of comfort, and, above all, a home-like atmosphere of intimacy reflected in elegant grandeur that was yet subdued and in keeping with good business practice. In the Arcada is to be found every element of that condition best expressed by the word cozy. In it is to be found also a grandeur seldom approached, a grandeur wrought of simplicity and good taste in architectural treatment and ornamentation that is at once obvious and appreciated. Occupying a site on a corner lot that is L-shaped, the Arcada Theater building houses a number of stores, business offices, lodge room, and other adjuncts as depicted in the auditorium and balcony plans. Ingress and egress is obtained from two sources, one on First Street and the other on Main Street, both leading to a point near the box office. The principal entrance is from Main Street, which is surmounted by an attractive canopy and leads into a vestibule. In the vestibule, the visitor receives his first impression of an architectural treatment that is intriguing and stately. The Spanish influence which is carried out throughout the house becomes manifest in the colored faience tile floor laid in broken pattern. The same floor treatment is carried on into the arcade which leads to the auditorium foyer and joins the First Street entrance. Artistic doors topped by transoms of ornate spindles divide the vestibule and the arcade. A typical rough texture is used for the walls of the arcade, which is 2 stories high. On one side is a confectionery and ice cream parlor, while on the opposite side, ingenious use has been made of a wrought iron fence. The arcade ceiling is finished in light cobalt blue. Across it are a number of beams of wood effect, artistically ornamented and supported by Indian heads, the sculptural work of Lester Norris. Stone benches, shrubs, and Spanish shawls in red and green, together with a series of delicate lighting fixtures, gives the arcade a most pleasing appearance. A stairway near the intersection of the First Street entrance and the arcade leads to the balcony floor. Here, from a point of vantage, manager W.L. Proct has a view of waiting crowds in the arcade and the balcony promenade on the second floor. A series of unusual leather-covered doors with brass buttons leads into the foyer. Here, the intrinsic beauty of the house is further accentuated with its luxurious carpeting, wrought iron fixtures, and coffered ceiling. At the left end of the foyer is a recess into which has been built a fountain of beauty, consisting of a coral formation with trickling water falling gently into a pool at its base. The projecting rocks are studded with palms and ferns and touches of moss covering. The background for this fountain is a sky effect of ever-changing lights, casting varied shadows and highlights on the picturesque whole. The fountain is set behind a handsome imported Italian gateway of wrought iron. The real warmth and grandeur of the Arcada is experienced on entering the auditorium. Here, looking toward the stage and on either side of the proscenium, an unusual effect has been obtained by the use of cane stone in a broken patterned arch, which extends up in front of the organ chambers and at the base of which are artistic exit niches. A brand new idea serving the purpose of auditorium decoration and musical utility as well is introduced in the Arcada Theater in niches that are placed at about the center of the side walls. The niches, offset by cane stone, consist of 3 arches in each of which is suspended a bell. When Walter A. Stone, who presides at the console of the Marrin Colton organ, has occasion to use the chimes in his instrument, the bells in the arches respond by swinging in perfect synchronization to his touch. The effect is such as to create a most pleasing atmosphere. Obviously, the bells are dummies, yet the result is realistic and inspiring. Another departure from the conventional is the treatment of the Arcada ceiling. Here, the architect has cleverly avoided the usual dome and built in its place an octagonal opening. This opening produces the effect of being in a Spanish court and looking up into another level. From the opening, which is achieved by use of the artistic spindles, hang clinging vines and a Spanish shawl or two. The ceiling itself is an interesting example, consisting of two massive main beams supported from ornamental plaster corbels, and from which are supported sub-beams, the whole giving an excellent wood effect. The beams are decorated and glazed with varied colored designs, and between the beams, the ceiling is an attractive tapestry pattern in light decorations. Plaques of the Spanish Main face the front of the balcony, which has an ornamental iron rail. Lighting in the balcony is provided by 5 ceiling lights suspended from exhaust grills. The chairs in the Arcada, installed by the American Seating Company, have leather-cushioned seats and tapestry backs. In the first row of the horseshoe of the balcony are comfortable wicker loge chairs with deep cushions, installed by the Haywood Wakefield Company. Excellent taste is shown in the cleverly executed exit niches at either side of the stage. These niches are flooded with light in 3 colors and contain orange trees, ornamental urns, and a wrought iron gate. The Arcada stage measures 27 feet by 75 feet and is equipped to care for every type of presentation and theatrical production. In the basement are 7 dressing rooms with every convenience for the performers. For aquatic and disappearing acts, the stage is provided with a trap space, the steel beams to facilitate this being quickly removable. Manager Proct is a firm believer in the value of good projection. "Here is the heart of the theater," he said as the writer accompanied him to the booth, which is 20 feet by 11 feet. Earl Nippert is in charge of projection. The equipment includes simplex machines with peerless reflecting arc lamps, Brenkert dissolver, Brenkert spot, Fulco film table and rewinding outfit, Hertner generator, and strong changeovers. The projection throw is 92 feet to a Menusa screen. A Kohler power plant has been installed in the basement to operate the projectors in event of emergency, and it is the plan of the management to install another unit capable of carrying all the house lights as well. Cry room and free parking features of Fischer's National. Exhibitors Herald and Moving Picture World. June 9th, 1928. The latest addition to Milwaukee's South Side is the new $1 million National Theater, which was designed by Dick and Bauer Incorporated, well-known Milwaukee architects. The theater, erected by George Fischer, veteran Milwaukee theater man, is the only atmospheric deluxe house on the city's South Side. The architecture of the National is Italian Renaissance, with the ceiling of the airdrome atmospheric type. It has a seating capacity of 1,500. The walls are built in Italian relief, giving the impression that one is in a medieval castle of Italy, looking out over the sunny Italian fields upon beautiful vineyards, groves, and mountains, with other castles in the offing. The theater has a unique lighting scheme about the proscenium arch, and approximately $50,000 was spent for lighting fixtures and electrical effects. Almost every lighting effect is employed at the new National, and the entire electric installation was done by Eline Ortman Electric Company. The seats are of overstuffed type with rich leather covering, and they have been placed far enough apart so that no one is crowded. A gigantic cooling system has been installed to keep the theater comfortable during the hot summer months, as well as an efficient heating system. A unique feature of the theater is a cry room, glass-encased and soundproof, located in the center of the rear of the theater under the balcony. Here, mothers may take their children when they become unruly and still enjoy the picture without disturbing the audience. Perfect visibility is assured from the soundproof cry room, which measures approximately 15 by 22 feet, and is fitted for the supreme comfort of the mother and her child. The National is the first theater in the city to boast of a room of this kind for the children. It was Mr. Fischer who, 17 years ago, when he was manager of the Alhambra Theater in Milwaukee, which was then operated by the Sachs brothers, originated the Playroom, an innovation for theatergoers at that time. Another interesting feature of the theater is its parking space. Although Mr. Fischer has had high offers for this space since it is exceedingly valuable, he has continued to care for the welfare of his patrons, and an attendant is constantly in charge offering free parking space to the theater's patrons. There is room for approximately 150 cars. The National Theater Supply Company has equipped the National with the most modern projection booth, stage rigging, and box office equipment. Wall and floor tile were furnished by the Milwaukee Tile and Mosaic Company, and all the ornamental ironwork was furnished and installed by the Globe Wire and Iron Works, Milwaukee. E.W. Van Norman, for many years manager and owner of the Parkway Theater, Milwaukee, is manager of the new theater. An 8-piece symphony orchestra is under the direction of Albert A. Ambalang, while Martin Flug presides at the organ. In addition to feature photoplays, the policy of the theater is to offer stage presentations, comedy, and newsreel, with changes in program 3 times a week. Mr. Fischer, in addition to operating the National, is managing director of the Alice and Capitol at West Alice, and the Milwaukee located on the city's north side. Balaban and Katz House opens with pretentious festivities. Exhibitors Herald, August 29, 1925. Inaugurating what is undoubtedly the most pretentious celebration ever staged in connection with the opening of a theater, Balaban and Katz's new Uptown Theater in Chicago threw open its doors Tuesday noon to a waiting throng that immediately filled every one of the 5,000 seats of the new Wonder Cinema Palace. The opening, following a dress rehearsal last night to an invited audience that packed the house, marked the close of one of the greatest pre-opening exploitation campaigns ever executed in Chicago, which was staged in cooperation with the merchants of the Central Uptown Chicago Association. This same organization is sponsoring a week of activity in the vicinity of the theater. A week in which parades, concerts, dances, daredevil exhibitions, and similar affairs will make the new playhouse the center of attraction for the city's vast north side. It is figured that 100,000 persons daily will witness and participate in the elaborate program. The Uptown reveals a new grandeur and magnitude among modern motion picture theaters. Erected at a cost of $4 million, it is declared by many to surpass in splendor Balaban and Katz's famous Chicago theater. Among its outstanding features is the grand lobby fronting 60 feet on Broadway. The main entrance, spacious and imposing, runs 120 feet back to the main auditorium and connects with the foyer running through to Magnolia Avenue, making a lobby which is in reality 290 feet long. Backstage is a radio broadcasting station connected with station WEBH. The orchestra pit, hydraulically raised in full view of the audience during overtures, accommodates 60 musicians. The towers of the entrance rise to a height equivalent to 8 stories. Unlike other Balaban and Katz theaters, which are executed in French design, the Uptown is Spanish Renaissance architecture. The area covered by the theater, which is L-shaped, is 46,000 square feet. The opening film program, enthusiastically received by the audience, marked the Chicago premiere of the first national production, The Lady Who Lied, featuring Louis Stone, Virginia Valley, and Nita Naldi, and included a Felix cartoon and kinograms and international news. The overture of the Uptown Orchestra under the direction of Nathaniel Finston consisted of Capriccio Italien by Tchaikovsky. Jesse Crawford presided at the console of the Wurlitzer organ. Under Spanish Skies, a colorful Balaban and Cats stage production presenting scenes, singers, professionals, gypsies, and habanera dancers, was received with hearty approval. The Edgewater Beach Hotel Radio Orchestra proved a special attraction. Newspaper and billboard advertising featuring the slogan, "An Acre of Seats," was started several weeks prior to the opening. Located in one of the most wealthy and most busy districts of Chicago, the Uptown has been viewed by the Businessmen's Association of the vicinity as a decided boom to the growth of the community. The gala events scheduled for the balance of the week will culminate with a prosperity parade on Friday, in which more than 300 merchants will enter floats, and in which more than a dozen bands will take part. Balaban and Katz's new $4 million Uptown Theater, Chicago. Exhibitors Herald, October 10, 1925. Balaban and Katz, in their new Uptown Theater, Chicago, have again erected a motion picture palace which, for beauty, elaborateness, and general grandeur, fairly beggars description. Two factors alone, the $4 million involved in its construction, and the fact that it has a seating capacity of approximately 5,000, convey an immediate idea of the immensity of the project. Beyond this, nothing short of a personal tour of the Uptown can adequately picture its dazzling beauty, its ornate embellishments, and the splendid work of the artists and artisans who have created in it such a monument to the motion picture. Many of those who have visited the Uptown declare it passes the world-famous Chicago Theater, also owned by Balaban and Katz. In the design of the Uptown, Balaban and Katz and the architects C.W. and George L. Rapp have forsaken the French architecture used in the Tivoli, Riviera, and Chicago theaters for the colorful Spanish Renaissance. This is ingeniously apparent as one observes the colossal pillars that gleam with bright shields and deep, rich efflorescence, the velvet hangings and Spanish shawls, the magnificent mural paintings, the curved ceilings with their griffins, their heads of laughing kings, behind the charming little windows of Hispaniola that open on the great auditorium, the fanciful heads of Renaissance cupids, and many other subtle touches that, barring the necessary modern complex, makes the Uptown for all the world a vivid old Spanish castle. The Uptown covers an area of 46,000 square feet. Located near the corner of Broadway and Lawrence Avenue, the theater is laid out in L shape, with a huge lobby entrance on Broadway. This lobby, occupying 60 feet of frontage, runs back to a depth of 120 feet, and there connects with the foyer running through to an entrance on Magnolia Avenue, making the lobby in reality 290 feet in length. The pinnacled towers at the Lawrence Avenue entrance rise to a height equivalent to 8 stories. A feature of the facade are the colorful windows, which can be seen from the grand lobby, and from which, with the aid of floodlighting, a beautiful effect is obtained. The main auditorium is 213 feet in length and 170 feet in width. The ceiling is 92 feet in height. A feature of the new Uptown is the elevating orchestra pit, which permits the musicians to come into full view of the audience during overtures. Built over the orchestra pit floor is a resonator orchestral bass, designed by the Gallagher Orchestra Equipment Company of Chicago. The resonator bass is declared to greatly improve the tonal qualities of the music and to increase volume. One of the finest organs ever turned out by the Rudolf Wurlitzer Company has been installed in the Uptown. Projection equipment in the Uptown, supplied by Exhibitors Supply Company, includes simplex projectors, Hall & Connolly high-intensity lamps, and Cinephore lenses. Stage lighting equipment was installed by the Chicago Cinema Equipment Company, while concealed lighting in various parts of the house represents the work of engineers of the Curtis Lighting Incorporated. The large steel and asbestos curtain in the Uptown was installed by the James H. Channon Manufacturing Company. Ice machines for cooling the Uptown, having a capacity equal to the making of 365 tons of ice per day, were manufactured by the Brunswick Crochel Company of New Brunswick, New Jersey. Marshall Field and Company of Chicago supervised the decoration of the Uptown, furnishing draperies, carpets, and the furniture used throughout the house. The comfortable seats in the Uptown are the product of the American Seating Company. A switchboard, said to be the largest in the world and manufactured by the Major Equipment Company, has been installed in the Uptown. Probably the most auspicious series of events ever staged in connection with the theater opening occurred the week the doors of the Uptown were flung open. An entire week of celebration was staged in the vicinity of the theater, with parades, stunts, exhibitors, and other attractions, drawing thousands from every part of the city to the house. A Persian Palace for Pictures opened in Chicago. Exhibitors Herald, September 3rd, 1927. When the Avalon Theater on Chicago's South Side was opened August 29th by Cooney Brothers, the average American citizen probably for the first time gazed upon the real splendor of Persian architecture and design. Chicagoans, to whom the opening of $1 million theater has ceased to be a thing of interest, probably thought that the Avalon would be just another movie palace. But the Avalon is far above just a movie palace. It is a Persian palace of the atmospheric type where pictures are shown, and above that, it is an art institute and museum of Persian art and design. It is Persian from the front door to the backstage entrance, and to describe it with words is like shooting off a firecracker to duplicate the World War. Although the Avalon's cost is expressed in 7 figures and has an advertised seating capacity of 3,500, it is not one of those gaudy theaters that shrieks to every beholder, "Look what I cost." I wanted to create a theater where pictures could be enjoyed in restful and beautiful surroundings, rather than one that would be a mere flaunt of lavishness, says John Eberson, the architect. And to learn how successful he has been, one has only to visit the Avalon. Inside and out, the Avalon is a feast to the eyes, and a treat to one's intelligence. Entering the Avalon's single entrance, one steps through a narrow lobby into the foyer, which represents the formal court of a Persian palace. At the opposite end is a balcony with a wrought iron grilled window opening upon it. The window is known as a flirtation window, from which ladies of the harem would flirt if the Avalon were really in Persia. The foyer is divided into 2 parts separated by wrought iron gateways. This facilitates efficient handling of patrons. The incoming and outgoing crowds are at all times separated by the gateway, thus eliminating all confusion. The ceiling of the foyer is a thing of rare beauty, being studded with jewels of many hues and executed in the design of a Persian rug. Floodlights concealed in a cove below the ceiling play upon the jewels with colorful effects. On one side of the foyer are a series of arched panels built in the wall, which contain mosaics designed by Charles Morgan. These mosaics tell a complete story of a religious pilgrimage. The large center panel mosaic shows pilgrims encamped before the walls of a city, and the other mosaics in the foyer are connecting links in the story of the pilgrimage. In a corner in the far end of the foyer is an aquarium built in and flush with the surface of the wall. It contains many species of Persian fish. Descending to the basement, one finds a spacious lounge promenade, from which open the ladies' and men's rooms. In the center of the ladies' room stands a unique seat called a Persian love seat. The design, construction, and workmanship of this seat are things at which to marvel. Directly off this room are the juvenile room and children's playroom. The walls of the playroom are decorated with colorful panels depicting scenes from the Arabian Nights. And in this room, there sits a Persian cradle, picked up in New Orleans by Mr. Eberson, which is said to have been the cradle of Omar Khayyam. The tile floor of the men's room follows the design of a Persian prayer rug. An extremely unusual feature of the lounge promenade is a window opening upon the refrigeration room, showing the entire refrigeration plant. This affords the patrons a view of the plant, and proves an interesting feature of the theater. Saving the greatest beauty for the last, one again ascends to the first floor to view the auditorium. It is a scene of splendor that opens before the eyes. The auditorium depicts the garden of the Persian palace. Above, stars twinkle in a dark blue sky flecked with lazy, drifting clouds. On either side of the proscenium and before the organ lofts are tall minaret tower shrines, each of which is of absolutely different design, thus getting away from the usual theater interior, in which both sides are exactly similar. In the balcony of one shrine are two panthers, and a peafowl is perched upon the railing. The pillars of the shrines are encrusted with jewels, which are fitted loosely in their settings, so that the natural vibration of the theater cause them to move slightly and reflect the floodlights directed upon them. At either side stand large winged lion statues. These lions had symbolic meanings in Persian religion. The seats, supplied by the A.H. Andrews Company, are of special design which carry out the Persian type of art. The arms and backs are of clear wood. I said that the Avalon is a museum of Persian art and design. One has only to stroll around its spacious promenades and rooms to realize this. There are many beautiful pieces of furniture throughout the theater that were gathered in Damascus by Mr. Eberson and his agents. These pieces are inlaid with ebony, bone, and mother of pearl. In niches in the wall and upon rare old tables can be found charming pieces of Persian bric-a-brac and beautiful pieces of workmanship in hand-beaten brass. From walls hang antique tapestries from Damascus. All electrical features are of hand-beaten brass and were executed by the Victor F. Perlman Company. There are 90 different kinds of marble used in the theater, which have been brought from Italy, Russia, France, Canada, and from many states of this country. The wrought iron gateways, grills, and windows were executed by the French artisan Le Bon. Mandel Brothers of Chicago furnished the rugs and carpets. The dominant colors of the theater are dark blue and old gold. The walls are of Craftex, designed by hand in a typical Moorish texture. Inlaid in the walls are beautifully colored tiles of charming design and color. Everything backstage is of the latest equipment. The 3-circuit switchboard is a major pre-selective system, and the stage rigging is a Peter Clark system. The stage set was executed by Voland. The theater temperature is controlled by a Carrier refrigeration system and a Reynolds heating system with Ray oil burners. The Avalon projection room is up to date in every particular. It measures approximately 40 feet in length by 12 feet in depth. The equipment consists of 3 simplex machines, equipped with peerless reflecting arc lamps. Vitaphone equipment is also installed in the booth as a permanent feature. Vitaphone will be used several weeks following the opening. A separate room houses the Martin rotary converter. Ample ventilation is provided together with facilities for the projectionists such as washstand and lavatory. A new item of equipment noted in the Avalon projection room is a device known as the Gold E Framing Light Shield, the work of H. Goldberg, Chicago. Strong automatic changeovers are also part of the booth equipment. Grand Riviera, atmospheric-type theater, opened in Detroit. Exhibitors Herald, October 10th, 1925. Another of the new atmospheric theaters, similar to the Capitol in Chicago, which recently created such a sensation, was opened in Detroit last month when Charles W. Munns and Associates admitted a large throng of Detroit theatergoers to their new Grand Riviera. The opening was an auspicious affair, and the Grand Riviera, though a neighborhood house and located several miles out from the heart of the city, drew capacity houses. In architectural conception, the Grand Riviera embodies the same innovational ideas as were executed in the Capitol. These distinctive features lie in the architect's conception of the theater auditorium as an Italian garden under Mediterranean skies on a moonlit night. The Grand Riviera has a seating capacity of 3,000 and was built at a cost of $1 million. The house is operated by Charles W. Munns, President, Bert Williams, Vice President, and Harriet E. Applegate, Secretary and Treasurer. John Eberson of Chicago designed the theater. Looking into the auditorium of the Grand Riviera, one is given the impression of being entirely out of doors. Above the seated audience is the moonlight shining across the great blue vaulted dome, which has been so decorated that its extent seems limitless. On the right side is an Italian palace facade with ornamented grilles and softly lighted windows. To the left is seen a terraced garden with a small temple building, while above the whole are twinkling stars and moving clouds, creating a complete illusion. In front of the auditorium rises the proscenium, which was conceived as a triumphal arch with supporting columns, roofed with Roman tile mansard and a stone balustrade. The entire structure of this arch is richly ornamented in polychrome, lending a holiday atmosphere to the scene. Even above the proscenium is the sky and the impression of nature, which, coupled with the refrigerating and ventilating facilities of the theater, will create an atmosphere of the spacious outdoors. The most effective examples of classical architecture to be seen in Europe have been faithfully copied in the design of the Grand Riviera Theater. The unique lobby, which represents an enormous rotunda some 50 feet wide and 80 feet high, has an interesting dome executed in rough texture plaster decorated in true Italian polychrome fashion, and has a faience tile floor. Many of the motifs in this lobby are taken from the Villa Cambiasco, and the doorheads are from those of St. Peter's in Rome. The main foyer is richly carpeted, and has a heavy Italian texture plaster wall, ornamented pilasters, and a vaulted ceiling, giving the general effect of a stuccoed cloistered arcade. Interesting details of both these rooms are the hand-wrought iron gates, the hand-wrought wall lanterns, and distance mirrors. The side walls of the auditorium, the Ponzello arches and doorheads and hand-wrought gateways through the ground walls, and all the details of the architectural treatment are fine examples of the Palace of Gambaro at Genoa. The little temple in the terraced garden was suggested by the Holy Vault in the Cathedral of Lucca, and the pilasters of the triumphal arch and of the great columns are exact reproductions of the Academy of Fine Arts at Verona. Rich tropical flowers, fine pottery, and trees add to the illusion, making it a complete one. And the installation of an elaborate and especially designed lighting system has made it possible to tie all the effects of brush and plastic art into one impressive picture. The exterior of the Grand Riviera Theater is strictly Italian Renaissance, with glazed pulsichrome terracotta for the main body and rich cream-colored brick for the sides and panels. This style is strictly representative of the modern revival and rebirth of the ancient and classical Roman architecture. The lobby and foyer are executed with modified replicas of ornament and shape typical of the work introduced by S. Miniato and Niccolò Pisano. Since variety is the primary demand of the amusement-loving public, and theaters are too often constructed along magnificent but monotonous lines, the Grand Riviera, with its novel and lovely decorative features, strikes an entirely new note in the minds of theatergoers. Yesterday's theater is outworn, and today's theater is usually only an elaborate duplication of yesterday's creation. The Grand Riviera, with its classical lines and authentic decorations, belongs neither to yesterday or today, but to all ages. In providing for lovely and unusual surroundings, the builders have not forgotten all the modern features which go to make up the perfect playhouse. The more than 3,000 seats of the Grand Riviera are comfortable and luxurious, and have been placed so that no crowding is necessary. A $40,000 Robert Morton unit organ has been installed, and an enormous ventilating and refrigerating system makes it possible to keep the temperature in the theater at any desired point, ensuring warmth in winter and coolness in summer. The stage is one of the largest in the city, and has been equipped with every device for the successful presentation of faultless programs. Every light in the theater can be operated individually from the switchboard especially designed by the major equipment company, and a turn of the master switch automatically dims the lights in any desired section of the house. Backstage, the fittings are almost as luxurious as those in the front. Large airy dressing rooms with running water and plenty of light have been provided for the performers, and a large scene dock permits the storage of almost any amount of scenery and scenic effects. Following the custom of the best metropolitan theaters, all scenery has been counterweighted with steel, and any setting may be changed with a minimum amount of labor and lost time. The substage floor of the theater contains a large rehearsal room, a screening room, a musical director's library, and all the mechanical equipment necessary, including electric control boards, organ blowers, fire pumps, oil-burning apparatus, transformers, refrigerating machinery, etc. Despite the vastness of the auditorium, with its more than 3,000 seats, it retains an atmosphere which is always new and alive, since the Grand Riviera Theater Auditorium is picturing nature itself. In no other type of playhouse, it is declared, can the impression of vastness be felt to such an extent as in this atmospheric theater. On entering, the patron immediately finds himself seated in the Italian garden under the starlit sky. Far off to both sides stand the Roman hills, on which are placed the garden walls and the softly illuminated temple. In front of him is a huge arch which forms the proscenium opening of the stage. Above, all is peaceful. Stars twinkle in the distance, and clouds float across the moonlit heavens. Two of America's most unique theaters. Motion Picture News, November 4th, 1927. In the Soboba Theater at San Jacinto and Pillsbury's Theater in the village of Yosemite, California, claims two of the most unique playhouses in America, if indeed they do not deserve the whole superlative of ranking place as the most unique theaters in America. The first mentioned is a faithful rendition in modern theater construction of the architecture of the Indians and its external and interior design, while the Yosemite Theater is of the log cabin type, splendidly equipped and dedicated to the presentation of the finest motion picture entertainment available. It was the purpose of the builders of the Soboba to erect a monument to the Indian. The name Soboba is of Indian origin and means hot water, having relation to the hot springs which bubble forth from the mountainside at San Jacinto. The band of Indians who first located at the springs, though a part of the Cahuilla tribe, took the name Soboba, and the remnants of the band are still known by that name. Practically everything in the Soboba is handmade, and was done by the local artisans of San Jacinto, a town of about 1,500 inhabitants. The house has a seating capacity of 750 and is equipped with overstuffed seats bearing Indian designs. 2 simplex projecting machines are used, with Ed Raymond as projectionist. The main curtain is of terry cloth dyed blue, brushed in opposite directions with gold, blue, and green to obtain lighting effects. Drops and scenery were all made in the theater. The Soboba, costing about $100,000, has been called by some a Hollywood Boulevard playhouse in a Main Street town. Its builders have shown their faith in their community by contributing this expensive entertainment plant to the pleasure of the inhabitants. The scale of admission prices at the Soboba on all nights except Tuesdays is 35 cents for adults, except in loges, which is 50 cents, with a children's rate of 10 cents. Arthur C. Pillsbury's Log Cabin Theater in Yosemite National Park is suited ideally to its mountain location, 4,000 feet above sea level, surrounded on all sides by peaks rising from 3,000 to 5,000 feet higher. It is log cabin construction of the finest order, and in the most authentic design, but it furnishes the finest of screen entertainment under the most comfortable conditions. Mr. Pillsbury, president and manager of the company which operates the log cabin, operates his theater according to the highest standards of showmanship. He selects his pictures with the utmost care, and observes the rules of goodwill building in making his institution a community center for weekly religious services Sundays and donating it to the uses of local organization affairs. The theater gives 2 shows weekly during the winter season, and is open every night during the tourist season. The population of Yosemite Village is 360, with a floating population of from 8,000 to 10,000 during the summer months. The seating capacity of the auditorium is 366, but with the aid of some extra chairs when overflow crowds are attracted to the cabin, Pillsbury can take care of 400 at his playhouse. Since its opening, the theater has played to an average attendance of 315, which out of a possible 360 people located within a radius of 1/2 mile of the theater, gives this enterprising showman a record average. The log cabin was built at a cost of $25,000. Egyptian design and simple purity. The Exhibitor's Herald World, June 8, 1929. On the western slope of the Rockies, the Colorado town of Delta, which can boast of only 2,800 inhabitants, can boast of a strictly modern theater, and one which is even unusual in its architectural interests. It is called the Egyptian, and is managed by Howard Kuhn and owned by the Consolidated Theater Company. The Egyptian is one of the finest in its section, and represents much faith in the citizens of Delta on the part of the builders. And that faith has been justified. Full houses have responded. The Egyptian seats 600. The building is emphatically Egyptian. Indeed, its design in this motif possesses greater purity than is often found in atmosphere houses. Everywhere are found Egyptian suggestions. The exterior is finished in the latest California stucco, and across the entire front is an immense scarab. Another scarab has been placed above the stage. An arch-shaped roof, Egyptian heads along both sides, coves built in here and there, are some of the major mediums employed by the architect. Every light in the house is indirect, with the exception of the emergency and exit lights. The coves are fitted with red, white, and blue lights. These are shielded by the Egyptian heads, which throw the lights to the top of the room, where they are beautifully blended. On the east is found the stage, which is about 25 by 25 feet. Under this are the dressing rooms, storage rooms, and heating plant. A $12,000 console organ has been installed in the pit, at the middle of the stage. Crying babies are considered anything but an asset by a theater manager. This emergency, for any fond mother will assure you it is an emergency case, is provided for in the Egyptian. A cry room has been built on the balcony at the rear of the auditorium, and it is here that mothers can take the yelling youngsters, and at the same time can sit in an easy chair and have full view of the stage through a heavy plate glass window. At the opposite end of the balcony is the men's lounging room. Between the lounging room and the cry room is found a commodious projection room. In arranging this room, the designer looked into the future, for it is so arranged and equipped that when sound equipment is to be installed, there will be no changes necessary in present arrangements. In order to do away with a balcony, the lobby has been dispensed with, and a foyer provides the approach to the auditorium. Here, in an authentic Egyptian setting, is an ornamental drinking fountain, which is lighted indirectly with the colored lights. The important matters of ventilation and heating have been well taken care of in the modern manner. The heat is furnished by passing air through steam coils, so that it is kept uniformly at 69 degrees in all parts of the building. It is heated before it enters the room. Ventilation is so arranged that instead of carrying foul air directly upward and out, it is carried along the floor and then out. The new air is mixed in large ducts near the ceiling. It is washed and dried by electrical fans and distributed through nearly a dozen entrances into the theater and auditorium. Large exhaust fans are connected with the big duct eliminators in the floor. The building is fireproof. The floors are of concrete, while the walls are of brick and metal lath. With the exception of the studdings, which are covered with metal lath and plaster, there is nothing whatever in the construction material which is combustible. The Capitol Theater in Winchester, Virginia. Exhibitors Herald World, June 8, 1929. The Capitol Theater in Winchester, Virginia was erected at a cost of $1,000 a seat, fully equipped and furnished in the modern manner. It was designed by Joseph Nielsen, architect of Harrisonburg, Virginia. And Mr. Nielsen states that in his opinion, the Capitol is as well balanced and modern and economically built as it is possible to do when it is figured that 50% of the construction cost is being borne from the space which is rented by the theater for other purposes. This latter feature is a noteworthy one, for non-theatrical space enters into the planning of theater structures to a vast extent these days. The Capitol seats 1,200. Its design is based on Spanish motifs. The service exits, in keeping with modern practices when possible, are sufficient in quantity and location to empty the auditorium without passage through the lobby. The latter is thus left entirely to the accommodation of waiting patrons. Indeed, the Capitol seems to be rather better equipped in this phase than many a modern house, it being stated that on the opening night, a capacity crowd left the theater, and a waiting crowd of similar proportions was seated, all in a period of less than 7 minutes. The main lobby is surrounded by a mezzanine floor, from which patrons enter the balcony on the level at the front. And the mezzanine lounge is directly under the balcony, where they enter by means of 8-foot stairs. The main foyer is designed to give the impression of a patio, that important part of a Spanish building. Marble columns rise from the lobby floor up through the mezzanine. Entrance is had here to the auditorium main floor, or to the mezzanine lounge. The latter surrounds the main foyer, forming a balcony with grilled ironwork railings. Drapes and tapestries are employed decoratively in the motif. The auditorium walls are done in a blend of soft greens, magenta, yellow, and blue. The panel and ceiling beams are of dark walnut. Drapes used for incidental decorations are of old rose over blue. Indirect and cove lighting is employed, with color effect equipment. The Capitol, although located in the south, has no refrigeration unit. Yet from experience with other houses in Dixie similarly ventilated, it is expected that the atmosphere will be comfortable. The upward system is used. The electrical equipment provides for the control of all lights and effects by one man, either in the booth or backstage, and in combination, of course. Westinghouse equipment is installed. In designing the Capitol, the architect took into consideration the all-important matter of acoustics. The plastic decorations were so designed as to eliminate the most reflective materials, while drapes are placed to augment the absorbent qualities of the seats, and of course the patrons. No direct acoustical treatment was used, and the Capitol, it is stated, has excellent sound qualities. The organ is a Robert Morton. Haywood Wakefield supplied the seats. The ticket booth, lobby frames, and mirror work was furnished by the Stanley Frame Company, and the National Theater Supply Company was the source of numerous items of general theater equipment. The Capitol is operated by the Shenandoah Valley Theaters Corporation, in affiliation with Universal. Isaac Weinberg is general manager, as well as vice president of the operating circuit. The Capitol is managed by Frank M. Boucher, who is in charge of Shenandoah Theaters in Winchester. Boucher has had an extensive connection with the film business, having been previously with Paramount and Fox. Spanish atmospheric style featured in design of new Warner Theater in Hollywood. Motion Picture News, July 14, 1928. The new Warner Brothers Theater in Hollywood, which was open to the public on Thursday evening, April 26th, is the largest in that city, having a seating capacity of 3,000. The Spanish type of architecture is carried out in the exterior as well as the interior of this atmospheric style of house. The building is a 4-story structure, which houses office rooms and stores as well as the theater. It is situated on Hollywood Boulevard and Wilcox Avenue. The architecture is the work of G. Albert Landsberg, the designer of several notable theaters in this country, among them the Martin Beck Theater in New York City. In designing the Warner Brothers Theater, Mr. Landsberg has had the collaboration of Albert Herder, internationally known mural artist, who is responsible for the entire decorative scheme of the theater. The auditorium represents a Spanish garden, with the open-air effect suggested by the blue domed ceiling, studded with stars. The sidewalls are surmounted by an arcade of pillars, with a distant landscape showing through the arches. The coloring used throughout is an intensified tone of flamingo, harmonizing with the turquoise blue and gold. This is first seen in the Grand Promenade, which sweeps in a great curve around three sides of the theater, so that both ends are never visible at once. Numerous doors lead from the promenade into the auditorium, and also give access to lounges, restrooms, and elevators to the balcony floors. An effect of great height and width is created by the design of this promenade. Service features include a nursery room for infants, where toys and a trained nurse enable parents to solve the question of caring for their offspring while enjoying the show. A large main lounge room downstairs, and smaller lounge rooms on the balcony floor, and restrooms on each floor, with maids in charge of women's rooms. To facilitate the seating of patrons, an electrical board charting each seat has been installed, with light contacts showing the number and position of seats as they are vacated. In this way, the head usher has absolute knowledge of the seating situation at all times, the light contacts working mechanically as each seat is raised or lowered. The stage is large enough for staging pretentious spectacles. The entire floor is removable, thus providing sufficient depth for illusions and high-diving acts. The dressing rooms are below stage, and are elaborately furnished with tile showers and baths, and facilities for performers preparing their meals if preferring not to go out between shows. Frank Murphy, chief engineer at the Warner Studio, designed the electrical installations for the new theater. There are more than 25,000 electric light contacts, yet the entire control centers in one switchboard on the stage, occupying only 17 feet of space, and weighing 14,000 pounds. This control, moreover, is effected without a single electric wire being brought on the stage, as the operation is connected with a contact board and transformers below the stage. Ventilation is so arranged that fresh air is provided and changed on the ground floor and balconies separately. Interior views of Berlin's leading cinemas. Motion Picture News, July 14, 1928. A view of the auditorium of the Gloria Palast, a luxurious theater located in the downtown section of Berlin. A corner of the main foyer with stairway leading to mezzanine level. Simplicity of decoration, as evidenced here, is one of the features of this deluxe playhouse. Looking toward the rear of the auditorium, and showing the seating arrangement of the Gloria Palast. This theater has a seating capacity of about 1,800. A rotunda with domed ceiling and walls done in a metallic finish forms the inner lobby of the Ufa Palast, the largest of the picture palaces in Berlin. Note the simplicity of the decorative scheme. A view of the auditorium of the Ufa Palast, with a seating capacity of about 2,500. An interesting lighting plan is employed to supply indirect illumination from the ceiling and coves. A view of the auditorium of the Ufa Turmstrasse, one of the new neighborhood theaters operated in Berlin by this leading company in Germany. The Turmstrasse has a seating capacity of about 1,500 and provides the finest features of the leading theaters of the city to patrons of the community houses. General view of the Ufa Pavilion, looking toward the rear from the stage. The pavilion accommodates about 700 persons, in an auditorium designed along the lines of the modern ideas of theater plan and construction in Germany. It is a community playhouse devoted to motion picture programs. Alabama House is model of economy in building. Exhibitors Herald, December 24th, 1927. An excellent example of intelligent planning and economical execution in theater building is found in the new Ensley Theater, Ensley, Alabama, operated by R.B. Wilby, prominent theater chain factor. The cost of the building itself is $58,000, while the appointments and equipment cost an additional $22,000, bringing the total investment to $80,000. Neither beauty nor comfort was sacrificed in the planning. The theater is generally conceded one of the prettiest houses of its size and class in the entire territory. With a seating capacity of 950, the building proper measures 50 by 150 feet. It is of brick and tile construction, done in the colorful Spanish style. A corner tower surmounts the building, and from the tower, color-changing lights make a brilliant and effective display. A handsome marquee, brilliantly illuminated, adorns the front entrance. The Ensley has a special feature in its colored balcony and separate entrance for colored patrons that is proving a real asset. The lobby is 20 feet wide, finished in Spanish style, with colorful decorations in walls and ceiling. The floor is done in brightly colored broken shards set in cement throughout lobby and foyer. Bric-a-brac, paintings, tapestries, and attractive lamps enhance the effect, while two wall fountains, one on each side of the lobby, add a note of movement and life. The auditorium creates the impression of spaciousness. It has the breadth and depth and general arrangement of an expensive theater. Rich, warm shades of orange, gold, and cream recall the decorative schemes made famous by the magnificent buildings comprising the San Francisco exhibition in 1915. A more somber note is struck in the pilaster decoration, which serves as a foil for the brighter tones of walls and ceiling. From the four main entrances, wide aisles facilitate the handling of crowds. The seats are particularly well chosen, being at once substantial, comfortable, and decorative. The rows are placed well apart, allowing unusual freedom. The stage is 35 feet wide and 20 feet deep, adequate for vaudeville or presentation acts. Brocade and velvet draperies set it off effectively. Draperies of the same color are used for the exits. The projection equipment is complete and up to date. All the technical appointments of the booth were supplied and installed by the National Theater Supply Company. Powerful blowers control the ventilating system, which is of the latest approved type. It is connected with the central heating plant. The balcony, set apart for colored patrons and entered from a separate stairway, is built on a long ramp that affords a perfect view of the screen from any seat. The ladies' lounge is attractively decorated and appointed, thus providing an exceptionally interesting feature to a house depending largely upon feminine patronage. Another important item of equipment is the Robert Morton organ. Plans for the building included an arrangement for the organ chambers approved by an expert in organ construction and installation. The result is eminently satisfactory, giving the fullest possible effect to the tonal quality of the instrument. At first glance, the Ensley gives the impression, confirmed by more careful scrutiny, that an architect and showman combined talents in designing and building the house. The showman is R.B. Wilby, owner and operator of the theater, and the architect is D.O. Wilden, prominent architect of Ensley, who has designed and constructed many of the finest buildings in the state of Alabama. Without lavish expenditure, they succeeded in evolving a theater that, in general excellence, would compare favorably with many that cost twice the money invested in the Ensley. A deluxe neighborhood theater. Motion Picture News, April 29, 1927. An interesting and advanced theater employing the mezzanine arrangement, a plan which calls for a main floor and large mezzanine but no balcony, recently was introduced to the public of Chicago with the opening of the Piccadilly Theater at Hyde Park Boulevard and Blackstone Avenue in that city. The theater, built by Henry Schoenstatt and Sons and designed by C.W. and George L. Rapp, architects, has a seating capacity of 3,500 and is located in a 12-story apartment hotel operated by the same owners. The entrance to the Piccadilly is from Hyde Park Boulevard into a lobby, highly decorative in its general scheme. The lobby rises to a height of 40 feet and is surmounted by a huge dome of perforated plaster ornament and decorations. Marble columns support the dome. The floor of the lobby is done in an imported marble. Great length has been achieved in this lobby by extending it to the rear of the auditorium, embellished with a wall treatment of colorful detail featuring allegorical figures which depict theatrical art. A lighting arrangement of unusual scale and brilliancy adds to the attractiveness of this Hall of Jewels. The entrance from the lobby is to the grand foyer, tastefully furnished with tapestries, paintings, and works of art. The auditorium is rich in its decorative effects. The walls are lined with marble columns, which support domes in which lighting effects heighten the color of the scene presented to the patron upon entering the playhouse proper. The proscenium arch, surmounted by an overhanging canopy, has been designed to give the effect of a mammoth gateway. Large panels molded in oriental damask and draperies in silk and velvet are enclosed between the marble columns and the plaster detail of the auditorium walls. The main dome over the auditorium is floodlighted with soft tones of oriental glow. Paintings and art objects collected by the owners are a feature of the furnishings and decorations of the parlors, lounging rooms, and foyers of the Piccadilly. The accommodations provided patrons of the house about exhaust the list of conveniences and comforts thus far developed as features of the modern deluxe theaters. They extend to a finely equipped playroom, supervised by a trained matron, for children who accompany their parents to the theater. The playroom is decorated in a spirit that appeals to the child. It abounds in color and has wall decorations featuring animals and figures celebrated in the fairy tales. A nursery merry-go-round and other amusement devices for children are included in the furnishings of the room. In general design and decoration, the Piccadilly is a modern interpretation of the Oriental style of architecture, with richly ornamented ceilings done in plaster, finished in gilt and vivid colors, marble supporting columns, elaborate lighting fixtures in polychrome, and ornamented with crystal beads and wrought iron railings. Warmth is added to the scene of luxury and splendor thus achieved by the colorful drapes and rich carpets. In the equipment of the Piccadilly, the owners followed the policy of putting efficiency and patron comfort above everything else, and as a result, the theater is provided with the finest apparatus and equipment devices. Attractive and well-appointed dressing rooms have been arranged for the actors who appear in stage numbers presented in conjunction with the motion picture programs at the Piccadilly. Economy without a loss of modern utility or charm. Exhibitors Herald World, October 26, 1929. What can be accomplished in the design of a cozy and attractive theater without excessive cost is demonstrated in the new Nomar, which has been opened in Wichita, Kansas. Prior to 1928, Wichita, the largest city in the state of Kansas, had no suburban theaters, the many downtown houses being considered sufficient to care for the entertainment needs of the entire community. The summer of 1928 witnessed the successful opening of the Uptown Theater in the College Hill district, under the control of Harry J. Stockman, president, and J.C. Hartman, general manager, of the Stockman-Hartman Theater Company. Since the oil boom struck Wichita, Hartman and Stockman, having sold the Uptown, saw the need for a motion picture theater in northern Wichita, near the new oil field. They selected a location on the main artery of travel, between the heart of the city and the oil operations, as the site for the Nomar, their second suburban venture. The new theater is of the bleacher type and seats 800. It was designed by Boller Brothers of Kansas City and is considered by the architects to be one of the most economically built theaters they have recently designed, the cost being kept to a point below $80 per seat, and this without sacrificing the comfort or appearance of the house in any manner. It is entirely fireproof. The good points of the Nomar are presented through the medium of texture plaster and soft hues, contrasted with vivid shades of rich color lavishly stenciled on the plain ceiling and side wall surfaces. There is a minimum of ornamental plaster throughout the building, a saving of many thousands of dollars being effected in this one item alone. Transparent canopies, backed by a mellow glow of colored light, give an unusual treatment to alternating panels of the auditorium ceiling. The draped stage is for talking pictures only. Lounge and restrooms are reached by descending a few steps below the foyer level to the space under the bleacher portion of the seating. Consistent with the note of simplicity stressed throughout the interior, the exterior of the Nomar is of creamy texture stucco, trimmed with golden-toned terracotta. Splashes of color and draped awning material enliven the wall space above the windows at either side of the central feature. The increasingly popular free parking station for theater patrons has found a location adjoining the new theater. The King's fine new 4,000-seat Low House in Brooklyn. Exhibitors Herald World, October 26, 1929. The new King's Theater is a new member of the Low family of theaters recently opened in Brooklyn. The King's was designed by Rap and Rap of Chicago and New York, in the spirit of the old French kings, in their architecture, furnishings, and atmosphere. The design has been done in the motif of Louis XIV, but it also employs details and embellishment from the reigns of Louis XV and Louis XVI. The King's seats 4,000, although it is a neighborhood house. More and more will the neighborhood house become popular, due a great deal to difficulty in parking facilities in the city, and also because it draws on a surrounding territory which offers a staple patronage. Owners and architects find that the same crowd, more or less, will visit the neighborhood theater every week, sometimes several times a week. It is for this reason that the designers sought to use elements which give an atmosphere of close contact, making the entire environment one to create community feeling, and to impress upon the patrons that the house was built for them, that it is their meeting place. The entrance to the King's has a capacity of 40 feet. This entrance is surmounted by a huge canopy dotted with myriads of lamps. The main entrance leads one to the ticket lobby, and from thence into the grand lobby. The grand lobby is 40 feet in width and 75 feet in length. The end is elliptical in shape, with two huge portals, one leading to the inner lobby, the other to the orchestra foyer. The walls of the grand lobby, rising to a height of 30 feet, are all in walnut, embellished with walnut-fluted columns, pilasters, mirrors, etc. The entire ceiling is divided into decorative panels enriched with mottled ornament, decorated in gold and colors. No expense has been spared in the treatment of the lobby, which fact can be well seen in the use of imported walnut woods and marbles for flooring, wainscots, stairways, etc. The inner lobby leading from this grand lobby is likewise in a treatment of walnut, with an elliptical ceiling of decorative panel work, done somewhat in the character of the grand lobby. The inner lobby measures a distance of 80 feet in length and is 32 feet in width. Leading from this lobby is the grand staircase of marble and bronze. The stair railing has been designed in the character of that famous stairway of the Chateau Chantilly in France. Off the inner lobby are retiring rooms, cosmetic rooms, and lounging rooms. These rooms are done in individual styles, some in modernistic design, others in English periods, and others in the more delicate treatment of Louis XVI. The grand lobby and inner lobby, although 2 units, are so planned that they give the effect of a continuous lobby. The arrangement permits patrons to leave the theater through the grand lobby without coming in contact with those waiting. From the end of the grand lobby at the side of the inner lobby, one enters the orchestra foyer. This foyer is 185 feet long and 30 feet wide, which in itself is one vast space of promenade. From this foyer, one enters the auditorium. There are 7 portals leading to the 7 aisles on the main floor. The auditorium is 160 feet wide and 155 feet deep, and 7 banks of seats. The seating capacity on the first floor is 2,900, while the remaining seats are on the mezzanine floor. The auditorium is equipped with side aisles. The side walls rise to a height of 50 feet and consist of huge pylons flanked with Corinthian columns, measuring in height 35 feet and 3 feet in diameter. These pylons are beautifully decorated and recall the scale and magnitude of the old triumphal arches seen in cities of Europe. These huge pylons support a mammoth dome covering the entire area of the auditorium, which rises to a height of 75 feet and conforms to the general shape of the auditorium. The dome is supplied by 2 sources of light, a lower and an upper trough, which give various tones of colored lighting controlled from the stage and mechanically operated. The stage gives the impression of a huge portal or gateway. The decorations on either side of the proscenium arch are of the Baroque Renaissance garden type. Features are niches designed to give the effect of fountains, waterfalls, grottos, lighted in color through the dimmer system. The side walls of the auditorium, with its introduction of pylons, are treated to give a series of large arched openings. Through these openings are to be seen mural paintings, depicting scenes from the courts of the later Bourbons. The dome is enriched in decorative panels and colored in tones of gold, red, and blues. The stage measures 34 feet in depth and 80 feet in width, and has a proscenium opening of 60 feet. The stage has been equipped with the Transvox enlarging screen, which can be enlarged or shortened while the picture is in projection to a maximum width of 40 feet. There are 20 large dressing rooms located on different floors. The auditorium has been found to be excellent acoustically, doubtless due to the breaking up of its wall areas by 2 huge pylons and sculpture detail. Danger was felt that the dome would be a source of acoustical trouble, but the breaking up of this unit by decorative features has apparently precluded such a possibility. One of the greatest problems in designing an auditorium of this size is to give the effect of intimacy, and not the effect of a huge coliseum, which is likely to be the result unless the scale of its different elements are well studied and well placed. For this reason, the architects decided upon the use of large pylons, huge plaques of ornamental treatment and similar treatment on a large scale, which they felt was the only way to make a theater of this size an intimate one. The entire theater is equipped with forced ventilation. The fans and intakes, refrigerating machinery, heating apparatuses, etc. are in the basement. Although sound pictures have a tendency to diminish the orchestra work, which nevertheless the pit in this house measures 50 feet in width and 14 feet in depth, all on a lift, and also with an organ console and piano lift. This pit will accommodate 40 musicians. Well, you made it to the end of the video, so here's your bonus photo. I hope you enjoyed the video and maybe gained an appreciation for this kind of grand movie theater architecture. The movie palace trend was a pretty short-lived one, but I find it fascinating, and I know quite a few other people do too. I have plenty more of them to cover, so definitely stay tuned for that if that's your thing. Well, that's all for now, all you sheiks and gals out there, but stay tuned for more tales from the Jazz Age.